Welcome to your favorite YouTube channel, Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Got a good one for you today, but first, a couple pieces of business. The Kayfabe-tober prompts continue. Thank you guys so much for participating and sharing these images that you create and sending them our way. The Nintendo prompt just happened not too long ago, and that was as fun as we expected. But listen, don't let your energy powder out. Keep with the prompts, keep tagging us, and we'll share as many of these as possible. We're a daily YouTube channel with more than 1,500 views in our filmography. Make sure you search around the channel, hit the magnifying glass on the front page, search for your favorite comics, and check out those episodes. We also have a Patreon, and the King Kayfabers on our Patreon get all the videos before anybody else. They're hanging out with us in the chat room right now. They have access to an archive of about 25 videos that we've yet to release right now, so they get to jump on the Kayfabe effect. Without further ado, Jimmy, let's take a look at Gilbert Hernandez' masterpiece, Julio's Day. That is a collection of some stuff that he was serializing in Volume 2 of the Love and Rockets series. Jimmy, I have a out of circulation library copy, and I'm going to tell you why. I've given this book out maybe 6 times.
I have a new copy, but the first time I read this was a library copy. And it was one of the few library takeouts where it's like, you know what? I want that on my shelf.
Yeah.
So I went and bought a copy.
Yeah, that's so good, man. I've given this book out. This is probably the comic that I've given out most in terms of like I get it on the shelf and I'm so excited by it. And there are people who have that kind of mentality that I just know would be into. They would sort of get it. And I'm just like, you have to just take it. I'll get another one.
That's great. I always advocate for giving out comics. The comic I've given out the most, Matrix.
So there was this it's an interesting exercise that is done within the pages of Julio's Day, and it's not too far off from the Chris Ware Lint chapter of Rusty Brown, which is in the big Rusty Brown book. It's issue number 20 of the Acme Novelty Library, and it's this idea of doing a single story that encompasses the entirety of a character's lifespan. Now, Lint is a more formal exercise where it's more rigid in its construction, where each page is a moment within a year of that character's life. So if the comic is 70 pages, the guy's 70 years old, and you get a little snapshot from a day in the life, you know, taking the Frank King Gasoline Alley thing with the characters who age in real time to an extreme. The difference being that one page is 1 year rather than one page is 1 day, like Gasoline Alley.
Pulling that out makes me think this is a future episode.
It has to be. I mean, this is a masterpiece comic. Each of these individual Acme Novelty self-published books and the Fantagraphics, I mean, let's be honest, episode worthy. Episode worthy. Yeah, we've not done enough Chris Ware. That is to be sure. Now, Julio's Day, it's not as rigid in its construction, where sometimes a single moment might correspond with like 3 pages of comics, but you are getting the entirety of Julio's life, who I think gets to be 100 years old. And it's these very, very small snapshots of the character's life that builds a very rich tapestry of a town, of an entire family. These are your players involved. It's Gilbert Hernandez's masterful use of comic shorthand that creates a situation where it's never, ever confusing. It's so good to have this key here, because one of the things that Gilbert does, you know, Julio being the main character, you just follow the hair patterns, right? And you see that he's aging. You never see another character that has this kind of hair, and that's throughout the entire comic.
This does feel like Comics 101 by Gilbert. Like you could teach a lecture on this page.
Totally.
You know, you watch like his mother aging and stuff, and it's like one line, 2 lines, 3 lines. You know, it's just the simplest cartoon language.
Absolutely.
And it's fantastic. It's one of the things he excels at, although I'm going to argue throughout this book that he actually excels at the visual part, you know, just drawing and visual
Absolutely.
Side. And I think he's known as a writer, you know, and he does a lot of these different genres and different explorations writing wise. Like he's kind of all over the place in the stuff that he writes. And, you know, you could have your favorite book could be Gilbert Hernandez, and then like you could discount like half of his output because it's different genres, because he is so adventurous as a writer. And I mean, I commend him for that. It makes it very exciting as a fan.
Totally. So page 1 is day 1. But page 2, you see little Julio has more hair than he did as a baby. So clearly some time has passed. Which, you know, there's a creative challenge to that. Like, it's still a baby, but you put more hair on its head, and that indicates a passage of time.
He does a lot of these like long shots too that I really like. Stuff like this where it's pulled back almost. I would compare it to like Mobius, who I think of as doing very long shots.
It becomes very important once we start seeing
Yes.
Deaths take place.
Absolutely.
This is a family, and families are complicated. So you have pervert uncles, you have cousins and siblings who think you're a piece of shit, but onward and upward, man. We keep seeing Julio. This is not Julio, but we keep seeing Julio get bigger and bigger as time goes by, and the family dynamics are kind of constructed pretty quickly. And once again, more simple cartoon language. Like this girl, she's not too happy with little Julio. He's finding his place.
Or with Uncle Juan.
Yes, and Uncle Juan, is he a pervert? Like, is he a sadistic creep? Like, thankfully, it's not it's explicit in what Uncle Juan does, but he is definitely a bad actor, for sure. So Julio, not only do we figure out what his dynamic is within the family, we figure out what his dynamic is within the town. So there are other kids in the town that he's kind of interacting with. He's more soft. Gets bullied a touch. Cartoonist Kayfabe is brought to you by the books that we make. The Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus is out sooner than later. It's going to be in your stores, but it's not going to be there for long. Scoop it up. X-Men Grand Design Trilogy trade paperback coming to you in November. There are 2 trade paperbacks of Red Room out there right now. Trigger Warnings and the Antisocial Network with Crypto Killers trade paperback coming to you in January. Jimmy has a few copies of Hulk Grand Design at stores right now, but it is sold out at the publisher level, so if you see it, scoop it up. Jimmy's going to be having a big sale October 26th with a bunch of self-published stuff, including True Crime Funnies, the 1986 zine that has been available nowhere, so this will be the first time you get your hands on it, and the BW zine, and of course, final order cutoff is coming soon for Street Angel Princess of Poverty trade paperback, which is going to collect all of Jimmy's Street Angel comics that are not in Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive, which you also should have on your racks right now, or get it. Now that we're done paying the bills, back to the video. In this town, you got a guy that has a touch of some kind of affliction. He has kind of seizure fits, and you know his narrative plays a part, and I think that when you're developing a town, like there's a guy like this, man. There was a guy that we used to call the captain, who used to come out even when my mom was small, and he would wave a stick, like in his front yard, and then, you know, 30 years later, like I'm a kid and I see him like waving the stick, and then it gets to the point where there's going to be a day where the captain is not waving the stick out in his front yard, and that means that he's not ambulatory or something.
It's so weird. It's almost like a community celebrity.
Totally.
Yeah, we had a guy that we called Tongue Man, and whenever I was in high school, I can't remember what the subject was, but one of my classmates did a paper on him because he was like this local, you know, I don't want to, celebrity's probably the wrong word, but we all knew him.
Yeah, like a landmark figure, man. We have in Pittsburgh, we have the Can Man, who rides around and has like a little trailer and collects all the the pop cans. Julio's in school, a little bit bigger. Throughout, you're getting little bits of his personality. So what Gilbert is doing, he's got a massive responsibility with this comic. This is a tall order, because you're developing a town. Everybody has their own agency. It has to fit in with Julio's story. He has to have his own personality. You have to choose the right moments, because it's not clear. This is, you know, comics language 101, but it's not comics language preschool, which has captions that say meanwhile, 2 years later, all of that kind of Marvel Comics, DC Comics stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like Palomar, but as a family rather than like a whole town, even though we get some of the town in here and some ancillary characters around. But it's almost like a more focused version, you know, maybe a smaller cast.
Totally.
Time being a bigger piece maybe, or something like that.
Soft little boy appreciates the birds up there.
This is a brutal scene. Like reading this, it really felt like something to me.
Totally.
Because a couple of things happen as we go through this scene. One is these guys are bullies, and
Yeah.
easy to relate to, understand that. But they're bullying Julio in a lot of ways, destroying his book from school that the big production was made about. Keep this book intact. You're trusted with this.
That unlocked a core memory, because I remember when the government issued textbooks would come out, we would have to look at them just like you do when you rent a car and note dings and graffitis.
Yes.
Because if more gets added to the book and it's not kind of accounted for, your mom might have to pay $40, and that's a chunk of her fucking paycheck. In my neighborhood, like, you are in trouble, and your family might be in trouble if they got to shell out money that they don't have for these books. So that unlocked a core memory that I completely forgotten.
It's handled well here. It feels very stressful,
Yeah.
It seems like Julio cares about it. It's easy to recognize that. And so that's one piece. Then the other piece, as we go further through, is physical abuse of Julio goes on. And I don't want to step on it before we get there.
It's all good.
But the final piece, then those birds that those bullies started out tackling are added to the mix of like Julio's kind of like super traumatic day.
And just
awful.
Let's suffer more indignities. Now you're going to get beat up at home for being a soft punk at school. So you're getting it from all angles.
Yeah, and Julio's somewhat vanilla throughout this. It's almost like he's kind of our guide into this story.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the characters that surround him, siblings and aunts and uncles and townspeople, a little bit more colorful than Julio. Like he's just kind of our guide through this 100 years.
Yeah, he's the interlocutor character. There are two characters who are on every page, and there's a touch of humor with the other person being Julio's mom, who outlives Julio, and he gets to be 100. This is a period where, like, Gilbert was doing a lot of this.
The other stuff is like setting.
Yeah.
Is a character, and you're really seeing it here with weather, and we'll see it more as the book unfolds.
Jimmy, I wonder if these are the skies.
These are the skies, Ed. We had a conversation this week, guys. We were talking about drawing skies, and I was like, oh, man, I just read something. You had read Crumb and was, like, taking stuff from the skies, and I was like, I just read something that had really great skies. This was the book.
Totally. And what he's using is 100%, it's rapidograph. It's that dead line that has no bleed to it from a rapidograph tech pen.
Right, and this comes down to the artwork that I find Gilbert's art really amazing, because it is simple in some ways, and I think that he works kind of fast.
Yeah.
Like using a rapidograph, for instance, instead of a dip pen, be a little bit faster. And I think that he suffers for that, and also because he's paired with Jaime, and Jaime's one of the all-time great artists. Don't sleep on Gilbert. He is a master of black and white, of all of these textures, and of mood. Things that are almost like the subtlest of drawings. Like something like this. Damn.
Right. When he busts out the thick brush, there's magical realism to Gilbert Hernandez, in this story included. And there are these like worms that create a weird disease. And these and the worms are like these mudworm things that are in these structures. Like, this is not this looks like piles of poop. Like some big mud balls.
Makes sense though when you think of like mud slides, piles of poop not too far off
Right.
from if you're going to describe it to somebody. But it's another one of those tough scenes where like that farmer's there and he's got 3 cows under there that are mooing.
Right.
Like they're not dead yet, and what are you going to do? Literally tons and tons of dirt have now covered them. And reading this, like I keep thinking, like that's 2 very traumatic moments now that we've seen, and maybe 3 if you count Uncle Juan disappearing with Julio somewhere in the woods early on. It feels like this is life, right? Like life is hard. Like we're all going to die in the end, and you're going to lose people along the way. I wonder how this is received if I read this when I'm 23.
Right.
It'd be a totally different experience than reading it now, where it's like, all right, I'm halfway through maybe if I die naturally.
Right.
And that perspective just makes a lot of sense. And,
Totally.
and probably this is Gilbert creating this. I think this is 10 years ago or so. It's a guy who's lived quite a bit and reflecting on that. And you capture that of like, as life progresses, you're going to lose it all in the end.
Right. Yeah, what's crazy is I think it's much more than 10 years. Like, this collection is 10 years old, but I think those issues were from the aughts. Kurtzman vibes with this brush that he's slinging in, and with the just beautiful compositions.
You know who else? Jesse Marsh. Using that big fat brush on like nature.
Right. The pops, man, Julio's dad finds some worms in his
Speaking of more trauma,
in his burrito, and immediately is affected by these little shits. Man, he is a sick man. This is the grossest panel ever. This is is a call to blubber, I think, man. Like the body horror of that comic.
Just this spread, like him all swelled up with those fat fingers. Great cartooning to express like this dude is sick.
Yeah. Happens onto some guy's land who, is one of those kind of old codgers. The town exile, basically. So, like, you could imagine that towns like these would have that guy that has the thatched hut with a kooky wife. And they look like ripped straight out of Rory Hayes comics.
As a cartoonist, Ed, how hard is it to take your character and, like, bloat him?
Right.
Oh, man. It looks effortless here, too.
They get the swelling down a bit, but he is not unaffected. It carries on through life, and it turns out that it becomes kind of hereditary. Like he passes on the worm to his family.
Yeah, and those people that help him that he stumbles into, the wife suggests that it's his wife was poisoning him.
Right.
Which is not the case, but it's funny to see that kind of paranoid worldview put on top of it.
The pop's getting more and more jacked up along the way, and then kind of like getting better, probably passing out for some time, and then finds his family. Look at those white silhouettes, and we know who they all are because it's been established. You don't need to draw anymore. We know exactly who they are. There's that hill again, that very, very important hill.
Becomes we recognize it so strong as like his home place. He's going to live there this whole book, and it becomes more and more, a piece of the storytelling. This is great though as 3 panels to me because you get the distended belly, and I feel like this is roadkill, swelling up in the sun, but you also get the time passage of sun and moon.
Yeah.
Great cartooning in that sense. No words, 3 panels. I don't think you could tell it more efficiently.
So our fella that gets the fits, he's going off to war and looks handsome. Does he not look like Barefoot Gen manga types? Like there's manga in that face.
Dude, that whole panel kind of has it, even with the little kid faces.
And the writing of the story has manga vibes to it. It's traditionally set up with, the American grids and stuff. There's not the hyperbole of Shonen Jump, but the brevity of the dialogue and the way you could breeze through it. This will be an hour to read.
Yes. Makes me wonder if he's reading a lot of manga. I mean, those guys are famous for like reading kind of all kinds of comics. Makes me wonder if some manga crossed their path at some point around here.
Gilbert is a guy who utilizes dark humor, we'll say, man. And there are some great bits of dark humor in this comic, man. There's a little foreshadowing, right? You got Julio and his like little bumpkin buddy. This is another piece that Gilbert does often in this comic where you have the white-haired person, the blonde, and you have the brunette, so that you could easily tell certain characters apart. It'll happen with age after a while also.
The way he plants the idea of Juan's bad acting, it's so ominous.
Right.
Julio's sister is constant, like she's on to him more than any of the other kids.
You get the sense that she's been victimized by the guy. She knows exactly what's going on. So here's our guy coming back from war.
Yeah, and even that is set up in kind of I hate to say humorous way, but maybe a black comedy where the guy's like, they sent him home after he had a fit in combat, and it's like on one hand maybe that just means he had a seizure and they decided he was unfit, and it's like no, that's not what happened when he had that fit. It's terrible. It reminds me of the Metallica 1 video.
Yeah, exactly. Johnny's got his gun. Look at this page of textures. Just fascinating.
That's another manga. It feels manga-esque.
Totally.
Just let's capture the atmosphere, the passing of seasons and time. And
I would wonder if this is in the Love and Rockets issue. Maybe.
Yeah, it could be. But it would make sense if you were trying to keep your page turns a certain way. Maybe you do have to put a page here or there. But it's good for the idea of the theme of the book, just this passage of time. It's another way to show that. And there's a lot of those. You could go through this book and count those, like that sun-moon transition.
Right. So the town bullies, there's some sadistic little creeps, man.
That's kids.
Of the Harmony Korine class of kids, I would say, though. Because they're taking the town gimp and taking his clothes off and taking him out into the woods. Or maybe not. Maybe they're just happening upon him and the guy's trying to escape because he can't talk.
Right.
And we find out there's a big revelation where that character is concerned.
It's such a disturbing character design and idea all around.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, as a kid, I stopped going to church age 5, 6. And you go to church and you're seeing the people of the town. And there are a couple people that might have their mouth agape 100% of the time at church. And as a little kid, you're just staring. You just see it, and your parents nudge you and say, quit looking, quit staring. There's Dad. He's clearly affected by those damn worms some years back. And you notice, more gray in the temples. He had pure black hair earlier. There's some more salt and pepper built in there. And this is the last time you get to see him. And he is now officially, when we think of Dad, he is just this little cross that's on that hill behind the house.
Gruesome depiction of his passing. And I feel like that's stuff that I would see as a kid, like an old person who was expiring, a great-grandparent maybe, or uncle or something like that, and maybe with some medical elements. And
there's no dignity.
It's not pretty.
There's no dignity whatsoever in it.
And his whole family, they're like staring. Like you talk about the person at church with their mouth open. It's not different than what's happening here. It's just this is a loved one that's, you can't really not see. Great rain effects, too, where the house is just washed away in the brush strokes.
Right. Julio's older now. He's got his little pencil mustache.
And we could stop here and just be amazed at the evolution physically of Julio in the story so far.
Right.
Because it's, I think of it as like animals, whenever you see them as little, baby animals versus the grown-up dog compared to the puppy. It's such a contrast. It could almost be two different beings. And you get it with Julio here.
Absolutely. He's got his friend, too. And they're, spoilers on a 10-year-old collection. He's a closeted gay dude and has feelings for this guy here who may or may not be a gay guy as well. And upon a second reading, you kind of see all the hallmarks. You see all the affections towards the kid. There's Mama getting older.
You should comment too, this storm has basically wiped out their crop. It's an agricultural community, at least these characters. That's how they're making their living. And this place, it's not like it's great land. It's a struggle. And so, there is this push of characters are leaving, and Julio doesn't. And if he would, in some ways, you get to see the contrast with the characters who do leave and maybe come back and we get an appearance or hear about. And Julio doesn't do that. It's, again, it just feels very real.
Totally. Here goes Uncle Juan again, man, getting a hold of a naked baby, a naked little nephew, and you just know that no good is going to come from it.
Yeah, and that's Julio's sister grown up now with the babies and does not suffer Uncle Juan.
And he still gets his fucking hooks into the kid, man.
That's the disturbing part, and I feel like if you know people like him, if you've had that around family or maybe friends of family or something, they do. They're
it was
if they could put that persistence to something positive, it'd be amazing. They could do anything, but it's as you call a bad actor. It's disturbing.
And it was just treated so differently, even in our lifetimes. I remember as a kid, there was this youth league that, hey man, it was cool to play softball in the off hours of school with the homies in the neighborhood and stuff. And it was run by this guy who, my parents even knew, he fucks with kids, man. He touches kids. Everybody knew. And it's just well, don't be alone with him, is what they would say. There's nothing to do to the guy. Just don't be alone with him. And we were tough on the kids that would get messed with by him, because that dude would come by, take him out of class and shit. He's long dead now, but he'd take him out of class and stuff, and we would just be like, man, you're a punk. It was crazy.
It's nuts that's how it used to be.
Yeah.
It was everybody wanted it not to be true, to the point of we'll just ignore all kinds of stuff.
Right. But the girl, man, she once again suffers no fool. She is hyper vigilant, but you can't be around your kids 100% of the time. You gotta live. You gotta do things. She put him in the hands of a trusted family member, and that guy allowed Uncle Juan
her husband
to have some access. I see. And so this is this right here, another marvelous piece of Gilbert cartooning, because you don't see anything, you don't see what it is, but something ominous is happening on the other side of this mud pile, and it's bad enough that they are fucking they're gonna kick this dude's ass. Big mudslide, and of course the one set of hands that comes out of that is Uncle Juan, of course. Everybody else is toast.
You know what? That was another one of those scenes that a lot of manga in there, but also masterful cartooning, like when they're in the woods and it's silhouettes, and it is astonishing just looking at the cartooning chops.
It's a Garo manga. Like when you look at the key of... Okay, you know what? This is real good, because I have it real close. When you look at the key of young Julio, like, it is not far from the work of Yoshihiro Tsuje.
Fantastic.
Right? Like, look at that. I mean, it's almost one for one.
I see it again and again. Backgrounds, pacing. There's so much in here that feels that way. It makes me wonder if he had discovered manga and that was one of the influences on this story. It feels like it's almost built that way.
Now, this artist is in that second volume of Raw. Like, that's where we first discover him. He's in the Juiced Swart cover. I think that's issue number 2, volume 2. Back to our story. So now there's 3 crosses up on the hill. I couldn't get over this comic, Jimmy. Like, checking this thing out this past week. It made me want to, like, put it on my bucket list. Like, I got to do one of these.
I love it so much. And again, all these moments of just sublime artwork. You know, the almost misty, where you see that hill in the distance, but the white underneath, it's just that mist coming off, that fog in the morning.
Right. This is another... so much of this rings so true. You know these people. You have your own analogs in your life. I have friends this exact way. Julio's coming up with this kid, and the little freckle-faced bumpkin boy, he's talking all this big talk about what he's going to do, how he's going to escape the town, how he's going to accomplish all this other stuff. He's not going to be like his parents. He goes nowhere. It's all bluster.
And then Julio's younger brother, Benjamin, who's been an interesting contrast to Julio throughout. You know, like, he was the guy who's taken money from the bullies and giving it back to the kids that stole it. Very kind of personable character, much more influential than Julio in a lot of ways. He's going off to war now. And we're going to see several wars throughout this book because it's 100 years.
Right.
There were a lot of wars in this time period.
Yeah, that first one, we were talking about the Kaiser. So that was World War I. We're going off to World War II now.
And what do? You're going off to war? Let's remind you what can happen there.
Right.
You know, this is if you own a motorcycle, you get to hear about how everybody knows the person who crashed and died on their motorcycle.
Right. And there's Mama.
Yeah.
You know, even in 42, she's old as fuck. And then there's that one girl in the town who's like what do you call it? Like a Florence Nightingale kind of character, who goes off to war, like, pays her own way to just be a nurse or something.
And she says it in the very beginning when they're in school, and it's, what do you want to grow up and be? And she wants to be a nurse.
Oh, that's cool.
And it makes me think, you know, like, there are like almost the way you're wired for certain professions. Like, I could not imagine being a nurse. Blood makes me squeamish. For 1,000 reasons, I would be awful. But there are other people I know who it's almost like a calling.
Every school crossing guard's a fucking narc. They grow up to be some kind of narc. Every hall monitor.
I was going to say they were a hall monitor.
Yeah, fucking narcs.
Yeah. Some new textures that we haven't seen of these, like, cloudy, night type skies.
So you're saying that Gilbert Hernandez is a climate change guy?
I'm saying that dude gets every mile out of the brush that you could possibly get. You show me the texture that's not in this book that Gilbert's pulling out here.
There's our nurse girl, and she's trying to work with the poor guy. He's always trying to... What he's doing, he's trying to escape. He can't communicate. He really is Johnny's got his gun. And
it's part of that theme of, like, trying to get out. You know, trying to get beyond this town that you're born into. That it makes a lot of sense for me. I grew up in a town like that, where it was like, if you wanted opportunity, you were going to get out of school and move away.
Mm-hmm. You know, we're seeing his hair get whiter and whiter. And now there's a new generation cropping up. That's what we saw with Old Man Juan, with the little kids. There's young boys growing up.
You know what? Go back one page, because this is a wild piece. So this is Julio's sister, right? I believe.
Yeah.
And she's talking to the guy who had been wounded so badly in World War I and says, "It's not your fault, mister. People got you mixed up and now you're here. Your real family will find you one day and take you home." And it's like, what is that? And of course, we're gonna see that come around.
You know what? It's this page. It's the very next
I
page.
didn't realize it was the very next page. Right? Okay.
Yeah. I'm so glad you made us sort of pump the brakes on that, man, and go back because
I was thinking it was much later on.
Me too. Yeah, but so this is the guy that and another great cartooning piece, right? You could see how one could be confused, but there's certain facial things, like his face is a little fuller.
Yes.
There's differences. The eyes maybe, but a great little.
It's fantastic, and and they say it so well in the dialogue. Like, he's been here 20 years.
Yes.
And Julio's sister's been saying it this whole time, or at least for a while, and it's still like 20 years. It really captures again the idea of like, this is many lives passing,
right?
In the scope of reading this book, and I mean, comics, not very many have that sort of grand epic.
It's pretty harrowing. Epic is the word for this kind of story, and the interesting thing is it's a series of character studies. If we were to explain it in a Reader's Digest kind of version, I don't know that you could do it justice.
No,
it might even run the risk of sounding boring, and we have to do this big deep dive to just illustrate how just incredible a comic it is. And we gotta wean you guys off that superhero teat a little bit.
But you know what? I'd stand by that part on that intro page where I said, you could teach a class on this, because what this is give all of your characters agencies and arcs and treat them all with this kind of dignity of having, what is their story? If we're going to cover 100 years, many of these characters are going to be born and die in that span. Treat them appropriately.
Yeah. And I guess this is the sister. She caught a little bit of the gimmicks from her pops. And now she's buried up on the hill right next to him.
Yeah. You see now Benjamin and Julio both losing their hair or lost their hair.
Right. And Ben has got the dad disease, man.
That's another brutal, gory scene.
There's our Florence Nightingale going off to Korean War this time. So now we're able to tell the passage of time by which war. That's one of those strokes that I wonder if that's something that because it makes a lot of sense. Is that something that Gilbert kind of builds in early on in the construction, where another piece of telling the passage of time is the wars, because it's like you said, it's built in with the girl early, and then we get to see all the way up to Vietnam.
Man, it's a great time marker, and the mother again, with her back to the family portrait, now has buried 2 of her children.
Yeah,
and her husband. It's again, life is hard.
Julio Tomas was the little boy that Uncle Juan got his hands on.
I think that's a T-bird in the background. Just a little.
Now we got a conspiracy. We got some intrigue and stuff happening, man. Where we have Julio Tomas, man, with is this the sister?
I think it must be his sister's daughter.
Yeah. Okay. She's setting him off to lunch, and you're curious, right? Because like he's going to lunch, but he's given a lunch, and he's eating at a taco place. He takes the lunch to another social pariah. See, we saw the pariahs earlier. We saw the exiles earlier. It's almost like there's a new guy taken up in that little shack, and it's Uncle Juan. And
Right.
And Uncle Juan is he's that that stuff that like you hear the cops talk about whenever they have to talk with these like sick fucks who is making excuses for his bad behavior and shit. And Julio Tomas is rolling with the punches, and you're like, wow, he's sympathetic to this old fuck. But guess what? He's not, man. Those Chekhov's blue worms, don't build them into Act 1 if they don't pay off some point in the future. They got the best of Uncle Juan in the spirit of Mom, who passed.
Yeah, and you see daughter now visiting Mom's grave and saying, "We got him."
Yeah.
He's not going to hurt anyone else. Wow.
Time passage with fashions. It's the hippie era. Our girl's going off to Vietnam now. And we see, dude, the age is starting to show on our guys. Julio, he's getting a patchy mustache, like a little gray in the temples. His little hillbilly friend got some lines on his jibs.
You know what's disturbing is we have him saying my grandkids are ready to enlist, but since they're 4, 5, and 7, the war will be over by then. I hope. Afghanistan was 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, those kids could have been 20, 24, 25, and 27 by the end of that one.
Continuing the friendship between Julio and his freckle-faced homeboy, but they never consummate the relationship. They kind of keep it at a distance. They stay very, very close friends, but you know, Julio is a closeted gay fella.
Yeah, and it's a really painful bit of dialogue that his friend puts out there. The only thing I ever did right was get married, raise a family. If I had stayed a bachelor like you, I would have died of loneliness for sure. And it's like, how do you think Julio's feeling right now, buddy? That's people do that all the time too. It's one of those great observed kind of bits of dialogue.
Right.
Because people do it, they don't think about it at all.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of it as well, but it's a very human thing.
And there's Julio at the passing of Tommy, I guess. Really sad, man, completely beside himself. That essentially the love of his life that he was never able to express or anything. I mean, Tommy's a straight guy. Has passed, so that's like one of those very harrowing, sad things. Now we have that kind of thematic transition, right, where you have old man Julio, you flip the page, and then you have his young counterpart, basically a little nephew or a, you know, a great grandnephew or however you call that, kind of growing up. And this young kid is not going to make the mistakes that Julio made. So as he grows up, and he grows up quick, you know, we don't got so many pages left. But he grows up quick, and he's charming, you know, because he's dapper. He got the cool threads. He's got the good hair. He's well groomed, and all the chicks like him. But they're just saying something. He ain't feeling it. He ain't feeling it, and he is going to split at his earliest convenience. Clearly spelled out that he's a gay fella there. Ain't gonna linger on that thanks to the YouTube algorithms and whatnot. But he splits off. He heads off to the big city. Goes to King Cock to bartend a little bit. And has loves, has losses. Is that kind of seeker type character. Has the balls to split. Has the balls to, you know, traverse K1. I think we saw this character early on, like Julio's dad dealt with this character when he was a little kid.
Yeah, that's right. That was whenever he was rescued from the worm disease. That was the little kid that was walking him back and just kept on walking.
Right.
Kind of a Forrest Gumpian
totally
lifestyle.
Yes, so we're back to Julio living with his mama, and they're almost indistinguishable. They could be a couple. Now, once again, this was something that you know, you may remember growing up was the single guy who's living with the mom, taking care of the mom that everybody says is gay and stuff like that. Like, there were plenty of those in Homestead growing up.
I knew those, and also like the single woman who basically moved in to take care of her parents.
Yeah.
You know, and one passes, and you end up with this like multi-generation of two older people. You know, a parent and a child,
and I think in most cultures that's very much the norm, but it is always unique here in the States.
Yeah, it's I think one of the darker aspects of our aging in this culture.
Yeah. But there goes Julio, man, just becoming a waif, very skinny, and then our gay kid is coming back, and kind of reads the riot act to Julio. He knows that Julio's gay. It's the first time that it's ever explicitly mentioned when they have some interactions.
Yeah, it's interesting. You see Julio, you know, stop talking filth or you'll have to go. I don't know if that's not addressing his true nature or whatever, but I think it's also reflective of like, man, 100 years ago, I'd be beat to death for that, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean now too in some places. So it's interesting to see that generational differences.
Right, totally. And then we sort of end the story the way we began, which is that thing that you hear about often where there's the regression to childhood or babydom. You need somebody to take care of you when you're a certain old age, in the same way as you did as a kid. Very explicit. Like, we discovered that Mama's still around, and she's 113. We have our a little shrine to our nurse lady. So we're wrapping up that arc.
Yeah, she died from too much diet soda pop in Kuwait.
And look at Mama with her son in the same bed. The phantoms of 100 years of family there. A solitary crucifix above the bed. And Mama ushers off Julio. We end
You
as...
see the reverse from page 1. Almost like it started, that's how it ends.
What a masterpiece.
It is incredible. It's such a consciously literary too. Like, you see these themes of going away and home and isolation and all these different choices played out by several of these characters across generations. It's a remarkable book. One of the great graphic novels that I have read.
Absolutely, man. We looked at Love and Rockets 5, and it kind of came up in casual conversation. I think that those first 50 issues of Love and Rockets were building to this place where Gilbert was able to accomplish a story with this kind of gravitas, this kind of magnitude. You run the risk of pretense trying to do stuff like this. With almost any kind of work, you run that risk. And Gilbert, plenty of pages under his belt. I've always noticed a kind of like lack of self-consciousness with the artwork. He will allow himself to kind of go wild with some of the designs and pieces that he would draw. Just incredible comic. You're better for reading it. And the thing is, you read it once, it sticks with you forever. You'll never meet somebody who says, I think I read Julio's Day. I don't think that that's possible.
Yeah, and you talk about avoiding pretense. It reminds me of A Drifting Life.
Yeah.
I remember reading that, and like big moments would happen and we wouldn't linger on them. The next panel would just be whatever happened next. Life goes on the next day. And I remember like reading that. I think we even used to talk about this.
Yeah.
And it felt like the emotional part of these big moments would be inside of me, because it was like, I need that on the page. Why are we not lingering on this? Why aren't we making it a bigger panel? And Gilbert does that quite a bit in Julio's Day. Characters die, they go off to war, giant things happen, but there's never like extra weight placed on him. And I think that's one of the ways he avoids pretension.
Well said, man. You good to go, Jimmy?
Yes.
Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell so that we can notify you when new videos are available. Kayfabe-tober is still upon us, and these are your drawing prompts. Do not run out of steam. Make sure that whenever you post these images, you got to tag us, you got to @ us, you got to let us know that these drawings exist so that we can share, retweet them as much as possible, signal boost your accounts, man, get you some more followers, and we get to enjoy your creative work. We're a daily YouTube channel, and with more than 1,500 videos in our coffers, you might not have seen everything. Go hit the little magnifying glass on the front page of the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube channel, and I've noticed you guys have been doing that because we've been getting some comments on some pretty obscure videos, so thank you so much for digging into the channel. Search for your favorite titles, check out those comics, and if we have not yet talked about your favorite comics yet, you must let us know. Put something in the comments so that we can push those comics a little bit higher on our to-read stacks.
And whenever you find the favorite cartoonist or favorite comic book, share those videos. It's how we grow this channel. We're not buying advertising elsewhere. We rely on you guys to spread the good word.
Yeah, good call, Jimmy. We have a Patreon that you can directly support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. The King Kayfabers on the Patreon are hanging out with us right now. They hang out with us every morning when we record our stuff. They get a leg up on the Kayfabe effect that way through this private stream. They have access to every video before anybody else. And we always record one extra video so that when Jimmy and I decide to go on some travels, we can still keep the daily content coming. So as of this recording right now, there might be about 25 videos that Gen Pop has not seen. So you could take advantage of that before we put those videos out live. Ultimately, the videos are brought to you by the books that we make, and before you is a small sample of our bibliography. But Jimmy, let the people know what is coming out soon.
My next book release is Street Angel, Princess of Poverty. This will be out in November from Image Comics. You can pre-order it now at your local comic shop or online, and we ask that you do that. This is an Image book, and they need to know how many of these to print, so let them know that you want a copy. I am also self-publishing zines and comic books lately. You see the BW zine here, 1986, and True Crime Funnies featuring nonfiction stories. These are all available on my website, jimrugg.com, or patreon.com/jimrugg. And October 26th, I'm going to have a big holiday fall sale where you can stock up on this stuff and some of my other zines and minis that you may have missed. Hulk Grand Design is my contribution to the Grand Design mythos, and basically out of print. So if your comic shop has a copy and you don't, you may want to pick that up sooner rather than later, because Marvel Comics does not keep this stuff in print. If you haven't picked up a Hulk Grand Design yet, they are getting more and more scarce, so grab those now while you can.
October 17th, the Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus hits bookstores. October 18th, it hits comic shops. Scoop this up. About 75% of the print run has been accounted for. So we're playing with slim margins of which books are available right at this moment. So scoop it up sooner than later. It's the best book I've made. It's the 10-year anniversary of Hip Hop Family Tree. It's the 50th anniversary of hip hop as a culture. And it's gift-giving time. It's time to start planning those Christmas presents. And for the rap music lover in your life, especially if they don't know that this comic exists, this is going to blow their freaking minds. Not the only holiday effort to come out in 2023. In November comes the X-Men Grand Design trade paperback. This is going to collect the trilogy of X-Men Grand Design comics that I put together. So when you're out there getting your orders for Street Angel, Princess of Poverty, go tell the shop that you want your X-Men Grand Design trilogy trade paperback as well. There are a couple out-of-print volumes of that, so this will be your way to get them all inside of one handy paperback book. The focus the past couple of years has been Red Room, and there are 3 trade paperbacks of Red Room that will be out in total. 2 are on the stands as we speak, Antisocial Network and Trigger Warnings. Crypto Killers is coming out in January, and I do have to let you know that I've been working on daily strips for the past year. It's called Switchblade Shorties, and at my Patreon, you're going to be able to check those strips out before I start to release them on a daily basis beginning January 1st, 2024. Thank you all who are supporting the Patreon at that level and reading these strips well ahead of time. One of the gratifying things, Jimmy, is that people are developing their favorite characters, which speaks to the ability to get different personality into those characters.
To get those characters over.
Yes, for sure. So the books are the most important part to keeping the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel solvent and functioning. But there are other ways to directly support Cartoonist Kayfabe, and Jimmy, you could let the people know what those are.
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe e-newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts, merchandise, hats, mugs, stickers, and more at our spread shop. That link is also under this video in the show notes.
There you have it. The many ways to support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. We thank you for your patronage. Jimmy, please give the people their final marching orders and we'll be on our way.
Read more comics.